to APPA's weekly webinar. My name is Billy Zadek, Standards and Codes Administrator for APPA. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar recording will be posted to the APPA webpage later this afternoon. You'll receive a follow-up email in the next couple of days with a link to the webpage where all recordings are housed, as well as links to our upcoming webinars. Professional continuing education and AIA CLU credits are being offered for today's program. If you are an AIA professional requiring a certificate, please send an email to me at Billie, B-I-L-L-I-E, at appa.org, along with your AIA membership number if you have not done so in the past. All attendees are in listen-only mode. Please type your questions in the chat box and they will be answered in the order they are received. If we run out of time and we still have questions, responses will be sent directly to the person asking the question by one of our presenters. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Brandon and Mark. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be with you all this afternoon. Hope you're all safe and well. My name is Mark Fournier. Brandon Rux and I have been working on this project since July 2018, which seems pretty amazing. And we're really glad to be here to talk to you about the book, which we are really excited about. I'm one of the co-chairs, like I said. I'm an arborist and horticulturalist at the Trustees of Reservations My Toy Japanese Garden in Massachusetts. It's actually on the island of Martha's Vineyard. I have extensive higher ed experience at the University of Massachusetts. I'm a Massachusetts certified arborist and a LEED accredited professional. And I've got extensive experience in arboriculture, landscape design, sustainability, energy efficiency, building construction, recycling, public works, and facilities management. I spent 28 years at UMass Amherst, luckily all on as a student, and I was a director of plant operations and sustainability at LaSalle College in Newton, Mass. I've been involved in all 3 editions of the Grounds Guide. It's been great to work with APPA for over 30 years. They're a wonderful organization. If you haven't been involved with them, I urge you to get involved. And this book, this series of books is just an incredible series, and we're really happy to bring it to you.
And I'm Brandon Rux. I'm the Assistant Director of Building and Landscape Services at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago. I've been here since 2010. I originally was in the golf course industry, which is where my grounds background stems from. Went back to school, and then a few years ago took on some stuff outside of grounds, janitorial, pest control, elevators, all this fun stuff nobody complains about at all. So I was great working with Mark, and I'll let him kind of jump in here.
So we're going to review a little bit about how we got here, and then we're going to dig into the chapters and give you an in-depth review of the chapters that are in the new book. So a little background about the trilogy, which are the maintenance, grounds, and custodial books. 30 years ago, the demand for increased budget cuts reached seismic proportions on campuses. I remember this. I was at UMass Amherst, and our budgets were slashed during that time. So facilities managers scrambled for assistance to validate their staffing requirements and the impact of budget cuts on levels of service. And as many of you know, maintenance isn't really exciting, so a lot of times maintenance gets cut first. And so we wanted to be able to really promote what we were doing and support it. So APPA members and campus facility managers came together, and we began discussions about the need for a series of documents that would explain the need for staffing facilities operations, and more importantly, or as importantly, the implications of various staffing levels on levels of service and what would happen if they were cut. And so were born the APPA custodial facilities, actually maintenance and grounds operational guidelines. So the books started to be published back in 1992. It started with custodial staffing guidelines. Those were updated and expanded in a second edition, published in 1998. The original ground operational guidelines for grounds came out in 2001, and the maintenance staffing guidelines came out in 2002. And then back at what seems like yesterday in 2011, we published the trilogy for all three books, Custodial, Grounds, and Maintenance. And we decided a number of years ago now, almost 3 years ago, that we would update the trilogy. So there are themes that flow through each book, even though some pieces of the books are unique, but the themes that flow through each book include staffing guidelines, sustainability, which is one of my main focuses, benchmarking, position descriptions, use of CMMS systems, computerized maintenance and management systems, and outsourcing options, sorry. The revisions to these books have been based on input from APPA surveys of members, business partners, and others, and task force member contributions. Chapters have been added, edited, deleted, based on input from all these sources. The guidelines have become an indispensable resource and documents for proactive higher education leaders and others, including K-12 folks and municipalities, seeking to provide state-of-the-art, efficient, and highly effective services on campuses and organizations across the world. Our topics for this edition were selected from recommendations from surveys and other data collected from APPA members and experts in the ground industry. We're excited about this book because we assembled a wide array of authors from other colleges, universities, business partners, and specialists in various fields. And I will tell you, being involved in all three rounds of books, this was the hardest round to accomplish this, to get authors for the chapters, because everybody is so busy these days, being pulled in multiple directions. But we no pun intended, pulled it off and put together what we feel is a great book. So I said that sustainability was one of my major focuses, and I think right now one of the primary drivers today is climate change. It impacts literally everything we do, and especially for us as grounds managers, because since our grounds operations are so impacted by climate change and weather, anything that happens in climate and weather strongly impacts what we do. So we've included sustainability focuses in all the chapters that we've put together to help us start to address these issues in a comprehensive manner. In the third edition book, we have two major themes. The first theme is operational strategies, and that includes green roofs, invasive pests and pathogens, integrated pest management, modern technology and its impact on campus maintenance and operations, natural grass athletic fields, synthetic turf systems, snow and ice operation, and sustainable vehicles, equipment, fuels, and lubricants. And then the second theme is our staff, basically our people. And that section includes broadcast maintenance or zone maintenance, which is best for your organization. Brandon wrote that chapter. Ground staffing guidelines, leadership, how to write the perfect position descriptions for the green industry, contracting for equipment and services, and grounds maintenance, innovation, and improvement. The third edition includes concrete, practical, and real-world examples of strategies and products grounds managers can use to make their organizations more efficient, cutting-edge, sustainable both financially and environmentally. So we wanted to give you concrete examples. We didn't want to just give you theory. We wanted to show you actual programs that were putting these practices on the ground. We assembled an impressive group of authors, like I said before, from the educational, public, and private sectors, who possess a wealth of knowledge that will help you improve and grow your organizations at the same time. Okay, so now we're going to dig into the chapters themselves. So one of the chapters I was also excited about was modern technology and its impact on campus M&O, because I've been involved with that for many years and seen how technology can really improve your organization and make it more efficiently, work more efficiently. So this chapter includes the benefits of CMMS, how you can create a one-stop system, store, manage, and track work, how to choose a CMMS, which one best meets your needs, and we talked also about cloud-based systems that are much more common now and less expensive than the older systems were. How to make your maintenance mobile. I think this is one of the most important pieces of this chapter these days, because now we have smartphones, tablets, and other mobile technology that we use on a regular basis in our lives that can now be transferred to our work to help us become more efficient and connected with each other. The what and why of GIS, capturing and analyzing data. We talk about the spatial features, mapping, which I believe is incredibly important to tell our story and why our work matters. And then how we go from a paper-based system, a box of note paper, little slips of paper, to a really technology-driven, organized, and efficient system. We talk about GIS software, and that's it. We have an in-depth look at a wide array of GIS software options and their features, including products from Esri and Quantum GIS and others. That's a really interesting section because there are so many options now, and they're really difficult to understand how all those pieces fit together. We look at real-world mobile GIS applications in higher ed. One piece we look at is the stormwater mapping ability, and that helps us with the EPA's NPDES program, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System program, to keep records and comply with the regulations in that program. We also look at how we can map and tie in the data from our water meter tie cards. Then we have a case study, which is a GIS success for Concordia University. And that talks about how they mapped offices and classrooms and their contents. And that helped them incredibly with booths on campus and other operations. And then how they mapped their trees. Then the next chapter is Sustainable Vehicles, Equipment, Fuels, and Lubricants, which I wrote. This is a second version. It's an update from a similar chapter in the second edition. So with climate change, what we're trying to do in order to adapt to and mitigate the impacts of climate change is we're trying to reduce our reliance on fuels we burn and instead harvest the energy of the sun. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about electricity in here. It's another rapidly changing technology. There are a wealth of viable options on the market today. And hopefully, no matter what your politics are, there are new incentives on the horizon for using environmentally sound technology. And once again, we talk about giving special thanks to the many contributors to this chapter. So in this chapter, what we did is we highlighted a lot of technology, and we went out to vendors and institutions to talk to them about their programs, and they were kind enough to contribute amazing amounts of data and information. So we talk about battery electric vehicles in this chapter, and as you know, there are many more options on the market today, and they fall into three major types: hybrid electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and battery electric vehicles. And under battery electric vehicles, we talk about the three levels of charging, 1, 2, and 3, as they get faster and faster and more efficient. And then we also talk about mild, full, parallel, and series hybrids, which are variations of hybrid electric vehicles. One section that we talk about is a company called XL Fleet. I was intimately involved with them when I was at LaSalle College, and we used them to convert some of our shuttle and van vehicles on campus. And as you know, those kinds of vehicles use a lot of fuel, and there are not a lot of good options yet for those vehicles. So XL Fleet has developed a software and hardware program that basically adds an electric motor and a modified drive shaft, a lithium-ion battery pack, and control software. And what that does is that helps the vehicles get about 25% more fuel efficiency in the vehicles, sometimes more. It can be put on light to medium duty trucks, vans, and shuttles. And there's a plug-in electric version now. And soon you'll see options, if they're not already on the market, options for F-150 pickup trucks too. In that chapter, there's also a case study on XL Hybrid and how Yale University increased the fuel economy of their shuttles by 23% with the hybrid drive system from XL Hybrid. We also talk about compressed natural gas vehicles and other alternative fuel vehicles, including CNG, propane, and biodiesel. And then we have a case study where we highlight University of New Hampshire's Durham Facilities and Transportation Services program. This is one of the most amazing programs I've seen to convert a transportation program on a university. I urge you to go check it out online if you get a chance, and check it out in our book too. It's an amazing program. They've been integrating alternative fuels into their program since 1999. 55% of their fleet is now converted to CNG. Actually, they did that by 2019. They've also converted a large percentage of their fleet to ultra-low sulfur diesel, biodiesel 20%, called B20. And they're rapidly expanding integration of electric vehicles and level 1, 2, and 3 electric charging stations. Then we talk about hybrid loaders, which some of you may not know about. The Boston DPW is another program that's done amazing work upgrading their fleet and converting it to more sustainable options. They have a John Deere 644K loader, front-end loader. It's an amazing machine. It's a hybrid loader, which increases the fuel economy by 25%. And ironically enough, it's strong and quiet. And I urge you to check that out. I saw that machine operate. It was amazing. We actually talked to the operator who liked the vehicle a lot. So that's always a good thing to see. Another amazing piece of equipment we talk about are hybrid lifts. And we do a case study on Arnold Arboretum, which is part of Harvard University, extremely famous Arboretum in Boston. They've bought a hybrid lift. It's called an Omni lift. It's diesel over electric. And it has a 90-foot reach. I don't know if any of you would be scared about that, but I would be. But this lift can reach out 90 feet, has a 4-hour runtime on batteries, and then it converts over to diesel. And on their campus in the Arboretum, they have a number of solar arrays, so that's getting partially charged by the sun, which is great. And it can be as narrow as 3 foot 8 inches wide to facilitate access to narrow areas. And the nice thing about that is when they're walking into their prize collections to do pruning and other removals, they don't burn the nearby prize collections with the exhaust from the machine. Really, really amazing machine. Hook lift trucks, had experience with this when I was the DPW Deputy Director in Andover, Mass. We converted a number of our trucks to hook lift trucks. And basically what that does is increases your efficiency and converts a single-use truck to a multi-use truck. You can add chip boxes, flatbeds, large dump bodies. We actually specially designed a catch basin cleaner and a salt spreader for one of our trucks. We had a catch basin cleaning truck that was a single-use truck, and in winter, you know, you can't clean catch basins, so that truck would sit all winter, and we were down a vehicle for no reason. So we converted that to a hook lift. And so in the summer, it cleaned catch basins. In the winter, we put the salt spreader and a plow on it and used it as a plow truck. So it was a wonderful improvement in efficiency and use. Another exciting area which I've been intimately involved in is battery-powered grounds equipment. Some of you may have experienced this now. It's not like it was 9 or 10 years ago. There are now viable options on the market. They're quieter, they're easy to use, you're on off, you're not ripping your arm out of your shoulder trying to get the thing to start. You don't have to breathe fumes, so there's reduced greenhouse gas emissions, but that also is healthier for us and our staff. So we look at a number of different options there, one of which is commercial battery-powered mowers. We look at mean green mowers, which are really impressive new, field mowers, basically, with long run times, with lithium-ion battery packs. They even have a little solar canopy on them, which is kind of cool. handheld grounds equipment I just talked about. We'll talk about that when we look at the UMass case in a minute. And we have a couple of case studies where we look at the Medical University of South Carolina, University of Massachusetts, and have a little case study by Robert W. Phillips, who's an arborist out in west part of the United States. And the last section in the chapter talks about green lubricants. And this is a great section too, because we talk about a lot of the new recycled and re-refined lubricants, which are now gaining more acceptance. When they first came out, people were worried about the lubrication capabilities of many of these lubricants, and they've been proven to work, and they're certified now. So we look at Auto Be Green, and we look at Safety Clean, and basically they both make things like engine oil, bar oil, hydraulic fluids, greases, and this process uses 85% less energy than starting with crude oil. So a really nice advance there. And then another chapter that's special to my heart, because I spent 28 years at UMass, is the chapter is basically a giant case study that looks at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and their sustainable grounds management strategies. Thanks again to a wide array of contributors from UMass Amherst for the help on this chapter. We had staff, alumni, myself, and others who wrote this chapter and put it together. So the first thing we talk about is their tree master plan. There are over 8,000 trees on campus. They're a member of Tree Campus USA. And their campus master tree plan is a comprehensive plan that identifies policies and practices used to plant, maintain, protect, and remove trees in the famous Frank A. Waugh Arboretum on campus. Many of the trees in that Arboretum were planted in the 1860s and came from places like Japan and China. Then we talk about the campus tree nursery, which has been created at UMass since I left there. It's a pretty exciting place. It contains over 100 trees that are being grown to be used on campus, and it focuses on planting endangered or threatened species. Then we look at university greenhouses and planting fields. The university propagates 80% of the plants used on campus. This includes plants for special events like commencement and the new students program, as well as normal plantings throughout campus. And they've been really smart about focusing on drought-tolerant plants, which reduce the need for irrigation, water, and maintenance, and help us mitigate climate change issues. We look at the comprehensive composting program, which has been there for years, which we started decades ago. All vegetative material on campus is composted, and that material is used as soil amendment for campus landscape maintenance operations in the greenhouses and in the planting fields. We go again and we look at battery-powered landscape equipment, because the university has converted majority of their landscape equipment now to battery-powered electrics, because there are vast solar arrays on campus that now power this equipment. They have a wide array of string trimmers, chainsaws, pole saws, hedge trimmers, and leaf blowers. They've also focused on water use reduction. One of the interesting programs they have there that you may never have heard another example of is they use reclaimed water from the central heating plant when it's excess, and they use that for irrigation needs on campus. And they also reduce their irrigation needs by planting the right plant in the right place. Native plants, drought-tolerant plants, etc. They use mulching mowers, which reduce fertilizer use by returning natural nutrients to the turf. A lot of you may do that already too. And then they did a comprehensive restoration of the pond, excuse me, of the campus pond in the center of campus. They use natural coral logs to stabilize the shorelines and prevent erosion. They use native plants to provide habitat. And by doing this, they now avoid nutrient overload by trapping a lot of those nutrients in these new natural habitats. And they also installed fountains that provide aeration and also look very beautiful. And then in the last section, we highlight their urban wildlife habitat initiative. They're working on converting an urban environment into a more balanced natural ecosystem wherever possible. It's a very comprehensive program with many facets. They have pollinator gardens on campus. They've also installed bat houses, bats, which some people may know contribute to pollination, seed dispersal, and insect control. And the bat houses also help mitigate bats in the buildings. They go to the bat houses instead. They have a bird nesting program, bird nesting box program, especially focused on eastern bluebirds. And they participate in Project Nest Watch, which is a program of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which collects data on the studies of bird breeding and the fluctuations of population sizes. So UMass contributes their data into that comprehensive program. And then one of the programs I'm excited about and have some experience in too, that I think is a really smart idea, is a lot of us know that it's really hard to mow banks. It's difficult. It's really not a lot of fun. And so what UMass has done is they've, in addition to creating other low mow areas, they've started to not mow banks, and they've created wildflower meadow habitat on those banks. So that's creating habitat, and is also much safer for the staff because they don't have to mow these areas on a regular basis. So that's the overview of those chapters. Thanks so much for coming today.
It helps to
There you go.
Thanks, Mark. So I'll start off with so broadcast maintenance versus zone maintenance, and just kind of explain what they are. So broadcast maintenance, for example, would be, let's say, landscaping speaking. You have a group of people that mow, you have a group of people that weed, and maybe you have a group of people that remove trash. And they cover the entire campus or area or facility, and they do those tasks every day. Whereas a zone maintenance would be, and I'm sure this isn't unique to grounds, so maintenance, a lot of universities, higher ed is going to zone maintenance for a lot of trades, not just grounds, but zone maintenance would be, you have employee A, they stay within zone A, for example, and they cover everything. They do the trash, they do the mowing, the weeding, so that becomes their de facto area that they're responsible for. This chapter kind of goes over what goes into the decision to make your staff either move it to broadcast or move it to zone. And there's a lot of details that kind of go in there. It's not a one-size-fits-all type situation. There's a lot of things to think about, from a financial stance. So broadcast, you're not going to need as much equipment because, let's say you have 3 people that mow all day. You need roughly 3 or 4 or 2 mowers. Whereas if you have, broken out into 12 zones, you're going to need a lot more machinery because people are going to be fighting for machinery. Maybe you have to mow before 8 a.m. or after 8 a.m. So there's not enough hours in the day. So there's going to need some capital resources to purchase that equipment. Also, so if your campus is too small or your facility is too small to split up, it doesn't make sense. If you're on a 5-acre property, you're not going to be able to realistically split that in, or you might not even have the staff to try to split that in. Into groups. Also, there's skill gaps. So, for example, some zone maintenance plans, you might use somebody for general landscaping or general engineering, that type of thing. But when it comes to irrigation or horticulture or trees or that type of thing, where it's more of a specialized knowledge, athletic fields, for example, you might have a few people that kind of go through those zones. So the case study at the end of the chapter is from the University of Chicago. So when I started here at the university in 2010, they were doing broadcast maintenance, which was working. But what leadership wanted us to focus on was the staff were getting kind of burned out halfway through the season. If all you're doing all day, every day is sitting on a riding mower, it gets boring, it gets tedious. People we're looking for some change. Also accountability, both from absences of staff where, you can call in sick or whatever and nothing, there's no, you don't have to play catch up with your work. Somebody else is kind of picking up that slack because you're working in a big team and kind of going across campus. Whereas they were looking to increase accountability both from absences and just job performance. So what we decided to do was campus, as you can see, was already split into zones, which was really convenient with a little bit of, moving here and there because it wasn't perfect. It might be city block by city block, but that doesn't necessarily take into account the landscape. So we had to move a little bit of it. This is just what we came up with. And what we found, and again, it's not one size fits all, it worked for us, was moving into this, both increased accountability. Employees were happier because they were doing a variety of tasks. They weren't getting bored. One of the big hurdles that we weren't really expecting, the staff was so used to just doing the same thing day after day, and the supervision at the time was just kind of give them, here's your task for the day, where some employees really took it and ran this newfound independence and autonomous work structure that some took off and thrived, and some were they were so used to the old system that it took them a little bit of time to kind of get going. We're fielding questions and questions and questions every day. And now we're in a very, mind you, that was 10 years ago. So we're in a place now where if staff can work very independently, they become accustomed with their area, the people in their area. It's worked out really, really well for us, especially accountability, that if there's something wrong or something great, that those employees can be praised for that effort. It's not, and they can feel like they're praised as an individual rather than, being a group of 10 people saying, this looks great, and, it makes you feel great, but you don't really own that, right? So it's worked out great for us. And mind you, you could, on any of these chapters, we could do a whole webinar just on that. So obviously there's certainly more in the book that kind of covers this. So the next chapter, green roof technologies. In Chicago, we have a lot of green roofs. I'll kind of get to that. It's an incentive through the city, but so there's benefits to having a green roof. I think a lot of people go, oh no, green roofs, like, oh, it's going to cause my building to leak. Oh, it's going to do a ton of maintenance. But and I was one of those, I'll be honest. So during the summer, you're going to keep it cooler with evaporative cooling. It insulates it during the winter. Believe it or not, most studies are showing that it extends the roof life. It covers the waterproof membrane, as long as you're installing it correctly, right? Also, which is a big thing, especially for more urban landscapes, is stormwater mitigation, which is, I'll get to again in the incentives. So vegetation and plant selection, there's varying types. What you see here is a traditional like sedum green roof, which is personally what I like to see, just from a maintenance. It's, maybe the first season or two you're weeding, but it comes in strong, it grows thick. You don't really there's very little weed pressure being on a roof typically. You don't have to do much with it. It's kind of set it and forget it, the round peel green roof, if you will. So it's nice, I like it. But there's going to be certain areas where maybe there's, it's a roof that's a green roof. There's also some dining, a patio on it. There's something where people want a little bit more vegetation than just sedum. So you can do also like the semi-intensive green roof, where it's going to have a deeper soil structure. You can put maybe some prairie grasses or something like that. That's where you're getting into more maintenance. And if you're on an area that's going to require tie-offs, you got to think about the time that's going to go into that maintenance. You have to, get permits or whatever you need through your institution, and put your harness on and get up there and weeding for a couple of weeds. And then also the most maintenance heavy would be an intensive green roof, which is basically just a landscape on a roof. It's got trees and shrubs and a lot of maybe raised courtyards. We have a residence hall on campus that has a raised courtyard that's a green roof, but it's also, a courtyard. So you have into that. And public incentives, so there's a few. So a lot of metropolitan areas, New York, Nashville, Chicago, they're either promoting or requiring a green roof to hit sustainable initiatives. And at least in Chicago, it goes more in depth in the chapter, but in Chicago, for sustainable points to get your permit to build your new building or your retro, that you get a lot of points just from having a green roof, and you got to hit a certain square footage of that green roof, and they will come and check. I can promise you that. So then here we have the three different types of green roofs. The extensive, where that's typically going to be, you know, grown off site and comes in the trays, and it's typically sedum or herbs or some really tight grasses. That's what we use quite a bit of. They're easy. They're grown off site, so it's kind of, they come, it's ready to go, it's plug and play. The semi-intensive, you're typically planting, it's a little deeper. You're typically planting on site, you know, a built up roof, if you will. And then, like I said, the intensive is full bore. And also what you need to think about with that intensive is, how did that tree get up there? How big was it? If it gets, you know, if it grows quite a bit and then it dies, and then somebody wants that same tree, you're looking at a lot of financial resources with either a crane or who knows, hopefully you have a really, really big elevator to get that thing up there. So the next chapter, invasive pests and pathogens. So what you see here is the disease triangle. So you need the host, you need the environment, and you need the pathogen to get that disease. And what this whole chapter kind of talks about, you know, I'll just run through them. Dutch elm disease, which a lot of people are familiar with, chestnut blight, sudden oak death, emerald ash borer, which is kind of just ravaging ash across the country, well, at least the eastern and central parts, Japanese beetle, and kudzu vine. And it goes in depth about how to treat those and what you're looking at. So I'll kind of dive in on here. So emerald ash borer kind of worked its way east, from the east through Michigan, and then lovely that we have it here in Chicago pretty heavily now. And what you see on the left photo is the actual emerald ash borer. And then the middle photo shows kind of the entry point. They're typically D-shaped holes. And then the gallery, the photo on the right is that your traditional emerald ash borer gallery after the bark pulls back. Once you see that, call an arborist, because that thing's needed to take down. So a lot of the recommendations in the book, I'll kind of cover for EAB here. You're going to be treating on a 2 to 3 year cycle there's a whole variety of products that you can either treat versus a trunk injection or a soil soak there. And what we use is, or what I've seen used is a triage, is just one of the name brands. But we've had very good luck with treating these. What some places are, unfortunately, municipalities, areas are having to go through are, just kind of clear cutting ash trees, which is unfortunate because a lot of those are parkway trees. You're kind of just leaving it, but it's given an opportunity now to kind of plant, instead of a monoculture of ash tree, you're doing a variety, and maybe we can kind of learn from that. So integrated pest management, next chapter. So what you see here is the mistletoe on the mesquite tree. So IPM is kind of just give a wide overview of what IPM is. So the last, you want to use chemicals control or invasive control as a last ditch effort. I shouldn't say last ditch effort, but that wants to be the last thing you use. You're going to try to do cultural and agricultural or agronomic things before you get to that spray or injection or whatever. So there's a variety of things. IPM is also for pest control for mice and rats. The concepts are the same. It's just in grounds, but obviously, so regulatory control, meaning the government or the municipality is saying. So a lot of these things, for example, emerald ash borer, it's coming across in logs that people are burning, or coming across in that type of thing. So specifically, I know in Michigan, they are regulating what kind of wood can go kind of across the border to try to control that pest where it is. Also, along with the regulatory control is the alternative pesticide options, meaning like biological controls, predators for, you can use ladybugs as predators for invasive species. Certain types of snails you can use to eat other snails, and then also pathogenic and parasitic fungi, bacteria, that type of thing. Cultural practices, so trying to eradicate disease, for example, anthracnose on a sycamore. You're going to want to clean up those leaves, that type of thing. And then cultural practices in turf, you know, you're aerifying, you're mowing at proper heights, that type of thing. So then you get into chemical control, which is, as you know, chemical control should be one of the last things you need to use. And certainly it's okay to use if you're doing it properly and safely. Also, choosing plant genetics. So choosing turf species or plant species, tree species that are resistant to local pests in your area. For example, you're going to use a bluegrass turf strand that's maybe, you know, a little more resistant to leaf spot or something like that. You just have to keep in mind we need to use these things responsibly and keep records. So if there is an issue, we have records of it, and we are kind of the stewards of this industry, and using these responsibly, it's on us. The onus is on the facility manager, the groundskeeper. So assistance, you can find assistance certainly in a lot of places. University extension outreach, just taking a pesticide test goes through a lot of training on IPM. Also firstdetector.org, it's mentioned in the book, an area where you can kind of see what invasive pests are in your area and what to look for. All right, leadership. This chapter is by Jeff McManus, which is probably a familiar name from Ole Miss. He's fairly, at least, well known to me, but I mean, you can buy his book on Amazon, so that's a pretty big deal to me. So his chapter is really good. It focuses on leadership, you know, leading by example, and one of the founding principles in the book is this acronym GROW, which is greatness, resiliency, opportunity, and wisdom. So greatness, and encouraging people to be their best, do great work. Resiliency, which I think is so applicable right now with everything going on in the world with the pandemic and everything. Just building resiliency within your staff for when there are times of need, such as right now, you can get on with that. And then opportunity. So giving your staff opportunity, you know, we are in an industry where you might have some entry-level ground staff that there might not be a ton of upward mobility into other departments, or maybe there isn't the desire, but at the same time, creating opportunity for those staff to learn within their own industry, learn from their peers, and develop. So even if there's not, you know, at least people can learn from each other and then get recognized within that group. And also wisdom, it touches on, even as a leader, you have a lot to learn from your peers and those that report to you. He does a monthly a meeting with his staff where you know, they have a kind of open conversation where he's speaking with his staff and his peers, so everybody can kind of learn together. So the next chapter is a large chapter, and an important one is natural grass athletic fields. So it goes through the field types. So you have your native soil field. So the photo with the small sump pump there is from our baseball field, which is on a native soil field. So there's certainly challenges with native soil fields. Native soil meaning just you're planting into what you got, and there you are. So what you see there is used to be row houses that they collapsed into each other or onto each other. So that used to be an alley. So now it's filled with bricks and construction fill, you know, like 30 years ago. So what we have is drainage issues. Then you have amended soil fields, which is your soil field, but you're maybe mixing in some peat or a little bit of sand or some aggregate like that to try to improve drainage and improve pore size, that type of thing. And then sand cap fields, just like it sounds, just you know, an 8 to 12 inch cap of sand to improve drainage, improve root growth through there. And then high performance sand-based root zone fields, it's a mouthful. So here is a full sand soil structure, soil profile. What you can think of as, a golf green, a USGA golf green, full sand, gravel bottom, drainage, a little bit of peat in there. That's what that speaks on. And then the hybrid natural grass systems, which I can't hear anybody, but I'm gonna assume everybody's gonna be booing along with me when I say who has this. But typically up north, and the Green Bay Packers have one of these, and it's basically just a traditional turf field, and then they kind of weave in some field turf or some fibers, some poly fibers to keep that, because the winters get so cold up there, so they can play later into the seasons and they're not tearing up the turf there. But that's one example of using up there. So natural grass, the field design and construction, what you need to consider, where are you at? What types of grass are you going to use? Are you going to use cool season grass, warm season grass? Are you in the middle? Is it a guessing game? Seed sprig or sod. So for northern climates, you're either seeding or sodding, depending on how fast you need to playable, how much money you have to spend on this to get it up and going. Also, is it going to be irrigated? Which can also go back to if you can seed or sod. So if you have the resources to irrigate the field, that needs to go off, obviously, in before we start. Field grading. So for example, we have a facility that's a soccer field, a baseball field, a soccer field, and a track and field, javelin and hammer area, all within the same, they share the same field, obviously different seasons. But what we can't, depending on where you drain it, it's going to impact play for one or the other. So that needs to go in beforehand. Sure, if you have, it's just a soccer field, you're just going to, you're going to dome it a bit and it's going to go off the sides. But if you have another field next to it, those need to go into consideration. So it speaks about all the things that go into natural grass maintenance: fertilization, irrigation, mowing, aeration, top dressing, overseeing, all of the things that help with IPM, as we spoke in the last chapter. And then also suggested equipment requirements. You have a vertidrain spiker there, not a cheap piece of equipment, but certainly a good tool to have in your bag. So, so synthetic turf, so the polar opposite of the real turf, if you will. So I'll speak quickly on the evolution. So in the 60s, they came out with what they're considering the first generation of synthetic turf, which was basically indoor-outdoor carpet that you can buy at Home Depot, slap it on some concrete, and enjoy your injuries. And then in the 70s, they kind of switched that a bit. It went from nylon to poly, and poly fibers, made it a little longer. Still not great, but a little bit better. So in the 90s and 2000s, you got the third and then the fourth generation. Third generation is what you consider your typical synthetic turf, your field turf, if you will. And then the fourth generation being your standard field turf or synthetic turf with longer fibers, but also some shorter fibers in there for grip, keep your infill in. That's the kind of where we're at now is the fourth generation. So there's different types of synthetic turf systems. There's infill versus non-infill. Most systems now are infill, meaning you have your crumb rubber or some type of media in there with the fibers. There's two different types of fibers. There's the monofilament, and then the monofilament on the right, monofilament on the left, and then this slit film on the right. Most are monofilament now. It looks more like grass. On the right, it kind of lays over, just looks a little different. So then the seams, there's several different ways to do seams. The best and most expensive and time consuming is what you're seeing here. The sewing of the seams keeps it, because the pieces don't come, you don't get a football field delivered, via tanker truck and it unrolls. That's not realistic. So big rolls of this field turf need to be put together somehow. So the best, like I said, is sewing or, so then there's also glued, which is kind of the next step. And then you can either just use your standard glue or they use, not standard glue, but they're glue. And then also adhesive strips. Also for areas that get lots of different play, like maybe that field goes from soccer to football to baseball. You can use like little panels that are kind of Velcroed down or hoop and look, loop and hook to kind of change out those. Maybe you're taking the batter's box out, you just take it off with some Velcro, so be it. Also subsurface construction it's indoors, it's going to be a little different. You're not dealing with the amount of rain that you might on an outdoor area. Go quickly through. Here's the infill options. These are not all the options, but they're just some of them. So we have crumb rubber, cocoa fiber, and cork. And these were crumb rubber on the far right is kind of the standard. There's a study out that showed that it could lead to cancer. People wanted other options. And there you go. We use a kind of a mix of the crumb rubber, and at our high school field, we use it's ground up running shoes. All right, so here's a field turf maintenance log, just an example. I'm sure other manufacturers have their own. You kind of go through it to make sure you keep your warranty. So cleaning, infill, maintenance, painting, repairs, that type of thing. Track it. There's a piece of equipment for brooming the crumb rubber. All right, everybody's favorite, especially right now, so snow and ice operations. So the chapter kind of deals with all the varying strategies, coordination, equipment, training, development, communication, which is critical, especially at a large university, for example, Michigan State. You're communicating with so many different groups for snow removal, whether it's ADA, disabled students getting around, the police and security, that type of thing that you need to take into consideration. So here we have some examples of, this is at Michigan State University, who is somebody from Michigan State, several people from there wrote this article for us, or this chapter for us. Kind of balancing routes, you can see the different groups of equipment. Trying to make sure everybody's somewhat even. It's something you need to do to kind of to quell the doldrums that are snow removal. Also, here is an example of a kind of a capital equipment expenditure sheet. What you need to buy, when you're going to need to roll out stuff. Snow equipment's not cheap. It's also hard to maintain because of the nature of the work it's doing. And training of staff is critical. Very critical, and this is one training thing they use where, obviously on the left is accurate or correct, it's all the way down. On the right, it's going to wear down faster on the front. So training is critical for snow removal, both from safety of staff, safety of pedestrian, and also of equipment and your resources. So staffing guidelines, very similar. It's just updated slightly from the last few chapters. If we moved it there, at one point there were 6 levels of service for whatever reason, how it was done in the past. So we moved it to 5 levels to match up with the other 2 books. And there's a great case study in there from Thomas Jefferson University about how they utilize that for several areas on campus. Obviously this is tiny, you won't be able to read it, but just for example, there's the 5 levels on top, 1 being the most attention, 5 being the least. And then it goes through several areas on the left side. So we have contracting for equipment and services. So you have to evaluate your existing resources. And then what is a benefit to outsourcing? You might have union issues that you have to work through. For example, the far right is somebody climbing a tree. Risk management certainly might not want you doing that. That's why you get an outside vendor. Or maybe that tree smashed through a car that's parked on the street. Again, outside vendor kind of keeps your liability lower. And then the middle photo is after our graduation or convocation. We don't have the resources, the resod. There are several areas like that. We just don't realistically have the resources to get it in shape in time, as in, in a day. So you might outsource because you need to get things done quickly, and you don't have the manpower to do that. So position descriptions for the green industry goes through how you write a description, what's on there. There's actually an example description, which I'll show next. And the photo is kind of an example of why you need position descriptions. So if the job entails that you need somebody that has irrigation experience, you want to make sure that's in the position description, getting qualified candidates, and they aren't cutting irrigation pipe and putting a stick in the end and then electrical tape to hold it in. And that lasted a surprisingly large amount of time before we found it. So maybe a little MacGyver hack if worst case. So here's your position description. Kind of just goes through everything. So grounds maintenance and improvement. So this chapter is speaks about strategic level improvement, the Baldridge Award for Performance Excellence, which is the photo there. Also, PGMS, Professional Grounds Management Society, has their own award, the Landscape Management and Operations Accreditation Program, which takes environmental stewardship, economic performance, and social responsibility into play for that award. Also, this chapter also speaks to operational level process improvement, benchmarking, which I'm sure as facilities professionals, you're fully aware of benchmarking and everybody talking about it, and also tactical level of improvement. So this book was published just recently, August 2020, both in print and digital formats. Print is fairly recent, so if you checked a few months ago, it was only in digital. So if you're looking for print, it is available now. We hope you enjoy the book. We certainly enjoyed writing it and doing this webinar. And with that, I will leave it to Billy if there's any questions. I know we just have a few minutes, but also there is a discount code if anybody's looking to buy the book. Great stocking stuffer. And there's the codes, and I'm sure Billy will maybe send those out. I'm 100% sure.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, yes, we do have questions. First question is, does the book cover bacterial leaf scorch?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Does the book cover bacterial leaf scorch?
Oh, sorry. I was thinking the cover of the book itself. I don't know off the top of my head. I can certainly get back to that person.
Okay, thank you.
Don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I want to double check on that.
Okay, and then can you speak to alternatives to standard glass lawns, such as clover, other eco-friendly alternatives that are low, less frequently cut?
I'll let Mark weigh in on that.
You know, we have to do some research on that and get back to folks. We could check with the person, Pat McGuire, who wrote the Natural Turf chapter, who's a wonderful resource. So you could either buy the book, read his chapter, and then get back to him, or we could get back to you too with an answer. So, Billy, we can handle that after too.
Okay, great. And I'm getting several questions about the presentation slides. The slides will be available. There will be in a link that you'll receive in an email tomorrow afternoon. Our next question is, we are in the design process for our first smaller green roof project. Any particular recommendations in terms of soil media for green roof? Any learning lessons from poor designs or specifications that you are aware of?
Yeah, so I have the most experience with systems that are built or grown off-site, and what the systems that we have on campus, they drain very well. Kind of a soil sand mix. But the best ones that we've had success with were almost the gravel, very, very loose drainage on soil. I can get specific. The person that wrote the green roof chapter is from Live Roof. That's one of the companies there's many, but that's one of them we've used. And whatever they list as their soil is probably what I prefer, just something that drains very, very well. And then also with that, any weeds, they come out so easily with that gravel type media.
Yeah, and Brandon, you were correct earlier on when you talked about if people are looking for a low maintenance roof, using those what we call prepackaged roof systems that come on trays are really a good option if you're looking to have a roof that's going to survive long term and be low maintenance, because they've done a lot of research on soil mixes for those, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. What are your thoughts on propane-powered equipment? Is it becoming more popular, and is it sustainable?
I'll weigh in on the actual operational capacity. We do not use it strictly. I shouldn't say strictly, but one of the reasons we don't is just the sheer volume of LP containers you'd need. And we have a small urban footprint, whereas, you know, maybe a larger facility that has maybe they already have the large cage for the liquid propane. It's just not something we had the capacity to take on, and our environmental health and safety, you know, they were kind of erring away from it just because of the amount we'd need to cover the size of campus we need with the limited footprint for that type of material. And I'm sure Mark has a greater swath of experience in the actual environmental impacts of that.
And Brandon, you're right about those issues with propane powered equipment, but I think one of the things that's really important to know is that the battery powered equipment is becoming so much more powerful, so much more versatile. There are literally almost no limitations to using it now. You could actually carry your electric equipment through a building to the roof if you needed to do maintenance up there. The nice thing about battery powered equipment is, you know, we can get away from burning those fossil fuels because a lot of campuses now have solar arrays. So you're basically running your landscape tools from the sun, which is really nice. I think it's really good. And the thing I like about battery powered equipment is that also it's on off. You literally flip a switch. You're not pulling on you're not pulling on a rope or a cord. And also there's no emissions, which is another good thing, and it's quiet. So I think because of the advances in the battery powered equipment, and I could be wrong, nothing against the propane industry. I just think for this particular sector of the market that battery powered landscape equipment is going to be your best option. That's what I found anyway.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to do our presentation today. And I want to thank our attendees, as always. Thank you so much for taking time during this crazy time to listen to our presenters. I wish everybody a happy holiday season. And until next time, be safe, stay healthy. Goodbye now.
Take care. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.